Sure. So my name is Charles Payne, CISO, CTO for Neptune Media. I also do some angel investing. That's probably why we're here. So I've been in finance for, I don't know, over 25 years at this point, but the same in IT. So I've got a few different accolades that make me a little bit unique, which is I've got a background in finance, but I've also got a background in IT and psychology. I also studied pre-law in college. So I do love GRC, so that makes it a little bit more of a fun, unique experience as we go along and we go through things. I have a little bit more of an objective approach as I see things than some others might. That's a little bit about myself. What happened was I got to the point where I wanted to be a lawyer. My father wanted me to be a lawyer, and then if I'm gonna do law, I might as well understand how people work because I mean I'm there to convince people to believe me or not believe me or believe the other person, whatnot. But like let me study psychology along the way because I really need to understand the fundamentals. And then that led to one thing led to another, and it just became like this sport of doing IT at the same time because IT also ties into law, and it was like, hey, that's pretty neat. It went a little bit further than that. It was kind of a unique experience. It gives you a very unique perspective, yes, because then you can understand a lot more of what people are really trying to say that they're not saying. So it gives you the ability to read some micro expressions to understand what they're really meaning. So you have a different view. I was on an investment call like 2 o'clock this morning until 5 o'clock this morning, and we were talking about all the different strategies and what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And then at the end of the call, we actually recapped with the team, and then I explained to them what they were doing, what they were really saying that they weren't actually verbally saying. And they're like, "Hey, I didn't get that. They didn't. They're like, I didn't see that perspective." I'm like, "Yeah, the reason why they're asking for it like this is because they're trying to do that." So at the same token that we're doing investments, I try to educate our team so they understand a little bit more about what the fundamentals are and how that all ties together. Because at the end of the day, my goal isn't to be like a one man bandstand. It's to duplicate myself. And I try to give a little piece of myself every time I have conversations with my team, so they understand a little bit more about what I look for and how I do it. So I'm trying to build and duplicate myself across my team. So I don't really have a specific geography. I mean, I like looking at any type of investment that's lucrative across the world, as long as they're friendly to the U.S. Because obviously I want to go there at one point in time to evaluate. So if they're not applicable to the U.S. citizens, I typically don't invest there because it's prohibitive to what we're doing. But assuming that they're friendly, like the EU, European Union, and whatnot, there's no other restrictions. That's always an interesting question. That's always people's number one question to ask, and the answer always is it depends. Because it's like if I don't have enough, or if I'm not comfortable investing all of their minimum ticket or their maximum ticket myself, I'll call a couple other friends and we'll actually get into it together. And we do that because we want to get whatever's got the best value. So you're telling me, $50,000 gives me 5% of the company, but if I put in $100,000, I might get 25% of the company. And sometimes they get a little bit desperate and they need a little bit more money. I'm like, okay, so then can I do the $100,000 myself? Yeah. Do I want to get partners because maybe at that point in time that business isn't one that I'm very specifically knowledgeable in, like clothing, for example, or cosmetics. And then I have to go find one of my friends who might be more knowledgeable in like cosmetics or some type of other stuff that I'm not so fluent in. It's not my normal daily investment, but it's not to say that we won't invest there. So for me, I like pre-seed or seed. I mean, we might hit Series A. We typically never go past that, only because it doesn't align with our strategy. That's a great question. So for me, I while the team does play a part in it, I look for what's unique and if they have any IP. If they have IP, then at that point in time, I'll make sure that if the company goes wrong and goes south, I'll own the IP. At that point in time, I'll be able to recover my money. And that's where I focus on. If they've got anything that's unique, if they have intellectual property, so IP stands for intellectual property for the viewers if they don't know, but I look for something that's unique. If they have patents, if they have other patents pending, and so on and so forth, because I want to have that advantage. I want to have that type of license to sell, so I'll be able to have some way to get my money back, even if the company doesn't work out. That's what that's one of my number one driving factors. So I do look at if they do e-commerce, for example, then I would look at who's their CISO, who's their CTO, and do they have a proper procedure for PCI DSS in place? Do they follow and do they align to those type of frameworks? And the reason why I ask isn't because I think compliance equals security, because it doesn't. But at least if they have a start, or if they had a handle on it, it gives me a little bit better of a feeling that okay, it's not a waste of time. Maybe there's something here. And I say that only because, for certain rules with Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, if you're the reason of the breach, you're responsible to pay back the credit card issuers the amount lost. If you lose all the customers' credit cards and they charge $1 billion worth of charges, now your company's financially responsible for that $1 billion of lost profits due to you being breached. That's where I'm like, oh, okay, so that makes it a little bit more tricky. And that's why I audit based on severity of the risk. So face to face is critical for me. However, I don't need every meeting to be face to face. So once we meet and once we agree and everything is there, the reason why I do face to face is for the psychological reasons in the body language and micro expressions, etc. So once I get through that and then I've already validated the person, maybe once a year, once every 6 months or so, I can see them face to face. But aside from that, like the daily check-ins or the monthly check-ins or the board meetings, I can do virtually. I don't need to be there for everything because again, my purpose is to invest and forget about it as opposed to sit there and babysit it and help it grow. While I do sit on some boards and I do help some other companies grow, that's not my main business objective. I can't scale myself. So that's where I make sure that or I look for companies that have the ability to do that and the acumen to do that themselves internally so I don't have to get too involved. But there have been situations definitely where I've gotten more involved than I wanted to. But I did it because I wanted to make sure I secured my investment. I didn't lose out. And I knew if I didn't do it, then the probability of losing my money would be a lot better than 50%. And I'm like, uh-oh. Definitely the answer is once, but it can vary because it depends on many things. It could be just as simple as a handshake, or it could be something where they say a word or they say a phrase or they make a reference to something that's obscure, but I understand the hidden meaning or reason why they did it from the psychological point, and I'll be like, okay, and then I've got to meet with them like maybe 5 or 10 times before I feel comfortable. It depends on what their verbal and nonverbal cues are, and that's again just practice from over the years, but it's also very important to note that you have to be confident and comfortable in who you're investing in because technically you're investing in a person and not a product unless you own the patents, in which case different story. But when outside of the patent issue, it's until you feel comfortable, until you know that they can answer the questions without any ambiguity and be able to look you in the face, look you dead in the eye, and tell you that this is what it is, this is how it's going to be, and this is what we've already planned. And I find that many people can't answer a basic question of like, do you know how much it costs for your customer acquisition? So if you see me on a board, or if you see me at another investment summit, the number one question I'll ask any person that's pitching to me is, do you know your cost for customer acquisition? because it tells me a lot more than just do they know how to do math. It tells me do they plan, how they do their planning, did they do the planning correctly. And then it tells me a lot more information than they think it does, which is why I'm really honing in when they say, "Oh, it costs us $100." I'm like, okay, well, I need you to break down for me why it cost you $100. Why was it free? Why was it whatever? Because at that point in time, that's how I audit and I judge them for how they do their accounting practices and how frugal and how concise are they with budgeting, and do they care about money? Do they are they going to be concerned with my money, or they can be concerned with their money, or are they just spending money because they think it's cool and it's going out of style? There's a lot of little intricacies that go into it, and you'd be surprised. And some people are like, oh, we only do organic growth and we only do social media stuff like that. I'm like, that's still, in my mind, it still costs a human to do that. A human's still got to do that. It still costs time to do that. Someone's still got to get paid to do that. Or maybe the business owner's doing it themselves, or the founder's doing it themselves, but that's still time that they spend that they can't be doing something else that they should be. That's where it's always critical to audit what those answers are. So I, as much as I try not to be involved, I do have an open door policy, so they can call me as many times as they need to throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout the year. I don't want them not to call me. I just don't want to babysit. So I make my delineations based on babysitting. I don't want to babysit and tell them like this is how you write a business plan. This is how you execute your business plan. And I don't want to walk through the stages with them. I expect them to have those skills and be able to do it. Now, if we had a conversation at a board meeting and they say, hey, look, you told me that I should be executing social media platform, I should be doing X, Y, and Z, but it didn't work, or I have a question, what did you really mean? If they want clarification on stuff, I'm again, open door policy. They can call me as many times as they want. That's not a problem. But I just don't want to be babysitting like, okay, this is step one, this is step two, this is step three, and then walking through them the process of doing their business. They should already have those skills. But if they have process, or they have questions about those steps in the in the order of doing business, then that's okay. Like, hey, I know you said step one, post stuff on LinkedIn. If they have a question like, okay, great, you said post stuff on LinkedIn, I'm for it. What should I post on LinkedIn? Okay, so you want clarification of what you should post on LinkedIn? Then that's a different topic or a different story. I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with walking them through all of the steps of what they need to do to run their business. They should know how to do that. But I am okay with advising them of how to get to where they want to be with their steps that they're implementing for their business. It depends a little bit on the size of the ticket, but what I really lean on for my friends or my colleagues or my coworkers is the fact that I need expertise. Like, I've heard a lot of great things in fashion and marketing and in terms of cosmetics and makeup, but I know nothing about makeup or the fashion industry or anything to do with that type of marketplace. So I need help. So some stuff I hear is like, okay, that's really cool. I can see how that might be beneficial, but I've got to ask for help because I'm not an expert there. And one thing that is very key is that when you don't know something, it's better not to always try to figure it out yourself. It's better to educate yourself on the basics, but to go ask an expert, go ask someone that you can really trust that's going to tell you the truth, that's going to say, this is what it is without sugarcoating it. Like, yes, this is a really great idea, or this is a really stupid idea. You're an idiot for thinking like you should do that. And I'm okay hearing that. Because at that point in time, that might save me, $100,000 or $50,000, whatever. So I'm okay. You tell me I'm an idiot. I made a mistake. Okay. And then I'll change directions from there. So that's where that candid feedback between my peers and I come in. We're very candid with each other. Like, yeah, this is a stupid idea, or hey, this is a brilliant idea. Like, this is the way you could execute it. And that was one of the conversations I had last night. The founder didn't know what they had or how to execute it, and they basically needed me to run their business. I was trying to educate my staff about why we were taking the phone call and what we were doing, and then they looked at me like, "You do know that we have the acumen here, and we could just do it in house, right?" I'm like, "I know that, but isn't it better served for you to do your job and then let somebody else do what their job, what their passion is?" It's like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that was the conversation I had last night. Like, you change your oil in your car, and I've done that many times. There's nothing wrong with that. But I save, by the time I buy the oil and I put it in myself, I don't really save any money. It's just doing it because I feel like I want to do it. I have that connection with my vehicles. I'm like, okay. By the same token, did I miss an investment meeting? Did I miss a flight? Did I do something I could have been more productive doing something else other than change my oil? And 10 out of 10 times the answer is yes. I look at myself like, okay, I'll just take it to the dealership. I'll drop it off, pay them the 50 or 100 bucks, have them change the oil and call it a day. It's not because I can't do it. It's because I learned to be more logical and more discerning with my time. And that's predominantly where a lot of people make mistakes, especially in the early stages for startups. They don't value their time enough, or they don't plan correctly. So when they try to replace themselves or they try to hire staff, all their P&Ls, all their expectations, and all their stuff is off. That was another issue that we had and that I've experienced and I've had to educate people on. Do I help them with follow-up rounds? Yes. So in short, yes, I do. We actually host an investment summit, but we also host a cybersecurity summit. So if the companies are part of an AI, cybersecurity, or fintech, they would be welcome to attend our summit, which is where they would find most of their clients. Now, at the back end, the last day and a half of our summit, which is the 19th and 20th of June this time, is our investment summit. So not only would they get the opportunity to pitch to clients, but they'd get the opportunity to visit and talk to other investors that are in the CISO group. So that's one of the better values is they have the opportunity to one, find customers that are enterprise level, and two, raise any additional funding rounds that they need to. But that in and of itself isn't the value. The value is the more customers they can get out of the global Fortune 500, the bigger their valuation goes, and the more money their company's worth, and that's the value that we bring to them. I mean, we'll interact with the brands. We've taken a few of them to Vegas. We've gone to Black Hat. We've done some of the other conferences together. So we try to interact when it's appropriate. We try to make sure that whatever our interactions are beneficial and worthwhile for both parties. So there's some value that we can bring to them. We don't want to just get together and meet just to meet. We want to make sure that there's an underlying purpose for it. So in short, the answer is yes, but I mean, there's got to be a reason for it. It's got to be a justification. Yeah, so I'll be the first person to admit that I've had to pivot in many things that I've done. I would have this grand vision, and some one reason or another, I wasn't able to pull it together, or we had people cancel, or whatever the excuse or the reason was. And it's the ability to pivot and to plan a backup. And this is the exact conversation I had this morning at 4 a.m. For this one specifically, it was the fact that just because you have a goal and objective, it's okay to be optimistic. However, my personality is pessimistic. I believe in trying to get stuff done correctly and very optimistic that way. But the difference is I also plan for contingencies. So those contingencies are also called pivot points. So it's important that yes, you want to have a direction that you want your business to go. But if you can't achieve that, if you can't get there, you can't raise $5 million or $1 million, but you only raised a million or $500,000 or whatever the case may be. You still need to be able to survive on what you've already done and what you already accomplished. So it's very critical to have a backup plan. Like, okay, great, I couldn't build the software out completely, but I was able to do part of it and then at least establish the platform. Now I can raise awareness with the platform and help, go to my next round, my next funding round. So the being able to pivot gives you the opportunity to, yes, stay alive and then or stay in business and then raise additional funds because now you have something else to show. And one of the critical things is you have to be able to show progress. What we look for, and I don't, again, if you were like, hey, I'm going to build, a rocket ship for $1 million and we'll be good to go with just pre-seed, I'm already going to think you're crazy. But I'm like, okay, you've got a vision. And it's okay because I already knew up front when you told me your vision that you were never going to do it for what you asked for because you did your evaluation wrong. But usually at that point in time, I've capitalized on it and I've got more equity than I probably should have if they would have known and planned things correctly. So this is a little bit more where we take advantage as an investor because we already understand what they're trying to do because we see the vision, but they don't understand it fully. And this is where it's very important for them to make sure that they write the business plan because at that point in time, they'll recognize that they have a shortcoming, which will change their evaluation, which will then make it not so advantageous for me, or it'll change the evaluation where we get less equity or maybe a little bit more depending on the situation. But I would tell the founders that it's very important for them to make sure that they have a contingency plan and to write that into their business plan. They need to make sure that they know what they can do if that doesn't work, what they originally objected or what the original objective was. It'll save them a headache later. That's a question that goes back a really long time. That was a question when I was 13 years old. I asked my grandmother how the stock market worked, and her response was, "Here's some money, go figure it out." Um, so from there, I started learning early on how to do stocks and such. So my story is completely different than probably most people's, but um, I do it because it's fun. I have the opportunity to help people while making money, so I don't have to do what everybody else does per se. That's why I do what I do. I try to give back more than I take. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's what my philosophy is. I try to always help the next generation. They can be, and normally I don't I don't use emotion for my decision making purposes. I'm very rational. So when it comes to that, it has to be rational of why I'm doing what I'm doing. For example, I might talk to the person and I might love their sales pitch. I might love the way that they present themselves. Maybe I love them as a person, or they're like them as a person. But at that same token, it's like, okay, if I like them as a person, maybe they're a fabulous actor. So at that point in time, it'll force me to be objective to myself and be like, okay, great, this person has this great persona. Let me do a little bit of digging into the person. Let me do a little bit of digging into the company. What did they not tell me that I probably should have asked that I didn't think to that they didn't volunteer? And that's really I look for. Like if you're happy and everything's great, then you should be volunteering to tell me everything. But when you don't tell me certain things, then I tend to listen and be like, okay, why didn't you mention this? And I don't ask them this until I do my own due diligence. Then I'll go back and ask them after I've got facts. That's a little bit about how you can invest without actually having to be more mathematical, more methodical about it. When people come to pitch, I expect them to have an idea, but also have a plan. They don't have to have everything formalized, and honestly, they don't have to on the first meeting. They don't have to have a business plan right now. But if they're going to have a conversation, I expect them to have a goal, have a mission statement, maybe, but at least know what they want to build, what type of widget do they want to design, and why. What need is it going to solve that I can't do it a different store, a different vendor. So I always look for what's unique. And that's what I say to everybody. What's unique? What makes you unique? No, having a concrete network is difficult. It's one of those challenges where it's people, and people are sometimes finicky or flaky or whatever the case may be, and sometimes people are great. So it all depends. It's all over the place. But if you want to get investors' attention, the easiest thing to do is to be different. It doesn't have to be different in a good way. You can mean you're different in a bad way. You're definitely going to get the attention. Maybe it's the wrong one, but for example, if you were doing like a cybersecurity product, like you were doing some type of XDR, MDR, or something, some other type of solution, the question would be, don't hit the buzzwords. Don't say that you use AI and artificial intelligence in your product. Don't tell me about your blockchain and everything else. Like, because when you say blockchain, when you say AI, I'm already not listening because I'm going to ask you, do you know the definition of AI? And you're going to tell me yes. You're going to say it's going to do this and the other thing. I'm like, did you know that the definition of AI also involves it being cognizant? I'm like, what's that? I'm like, great. Okay. Like, that's the end of the conversation. So it's very important not to hit marketing keywords or buzzwords. Like, don't hit AI unless you say machine learning. If you say machine learning, then I'm okay with that because then you understand the differentiation between artificial intelligence that's cognizant and artificial intelligence that's manipulated through machine learning. That's just basically repeating back to you what it's already learned, and I'm okay with that. But I would tell the founders not to use the keywords or the buzzwords to get attention. If they fall into those traps, then they have to make sure that they can meet those expectations, and maybe that's the lesson. If you hit those keywords or those buzzwords, you better make sure that you can deliver something that's very unique that nobody else can. Because if you hit those words and you say, "Hey, look, I've got artificial intelligence," it better be able to talk to you and have a conversation like a person. Otherwise, you use the terms incorrectly, and you shouldn't have said that. And I don't want to listen anymore. So, according to a machine learning model, the three biggest things in 2024 will be around AI, cybersecurity, and fintech, which is why in 2024, that's what our conference is all about for those three reasons. So the money will focus mostly on IT and cybersecurity, but for fintech, so financial institutions, financial banking, financials in general, so financial companies. But cybersecurity is going to remain a big thing. So it's important to also note that as a CISO myself, we tend not to buy what's shiny anymore. We've finally learned as an industry, don't buy what's shiny. It tends to get you in trouble because it doesn't do what it says it's going to do. So we start to buy stuff that's more tried and true. So it's where the founders need to be very critical and very careful when they talk about buzzwords, not to hit them. Now, if they want to talk to me about a distributed ledger for blockchain, then that's great. But if they try to tell me blockchain and just assume that I'm going to know distributed ledger, then that's completely wrong. I'm going to ignore what they're saying. So it's very important to talk about what they do and not use the buzzwords about what they do. So don't use AI as the acronym and say that we do AI and blah blah blah. Tell me about the way your machine learning works. Tell me about the way your models work. Tell me the way the product works, and then I'll come to my own conclusion. Like, oh, it uses AI or uses some deviation of machine learning. Like, oh, okay, great, get it. But if you sit there and you try to hit all the buzzwords, it's gonna be really bad because you're gonna set the expectations really high, and you don't even know that you did that, and then you're gonna fail because you set the wrong expectations in your marketing. And that's where people make the mistake. They have the wrong metrics. They have the wrong perceptions, the wrong ideology. That's just a problem. Thanks for having me, Max. I really appreciate the time.